Nothing we say is investment advice. Please pause on all 3 pages of this disclaimer and read it. Greetings, Algo artisans. Nick Pietruzzello here. It is Sunday, March 9th, and we're going to take a look at the charts today for Bitcoin, Solana, Litecoin, EURUSD, GBPUSD, USDJPY, USDCAD, GBPJPY, AUDJPY, AUDUSD, USDCHF, SP500 Futures, Dow Futures, NASDAQ Futures, gold, and silver. You notice there are a lot more Forex pairs than there used to be, and that is because in the current environment, it's a great place to make money. And as the Bitcoin bear market may be upon us pretty soon, then a lot of traders are going to have nothing else to do. Better go out and learn another market or find another job. Before we go into the charts, let's take a look at the economic data that's coming out this week. But before we do that, take a look at this beautiful trade. Yes, I shared this with Algo Factory as I entered that last night at 11 p.m. EST. And it did take a few hours, but it ended up coming right down, and I exited right at the bottom here. Original target was a little bit lower, about 79,800, and I just saw some things that said, hey, you know what? I'm like 95% to my target, and my rules do allow me to take target after 80%, and so I went ahead and did that. Now, it does appear that it probably will head back down, but this was a beautiful 4.3 to 1 trade, and everybody at Algo Factory have to see me get into this hours before it actually went down. So that's kind of stuff we're doing over at Algo Factory. We're not a signal service. I'm not telling you what trades to take, but man, that's some really great entertainment if entertainment is what you're looking for. All right, so here we go over to forexfactory.com. Let's take a look at what news is coming out this week. Okay, Monday, not a lot of news coming out. No heavy impact events. Tuesday for the US dollar markets. That's the stock market. That's any kind of market really in the world, but mostly stocks and Forex USD pairs. We have at 10 a.m. EST JOLTS job openings, some employment data coming out. Now, Wednesday is a big day. At 8:30 a.m. EST, the CPI comes out, and all the predictions this week will end right around this time because the CPI can make a huge difference in what the market is doing. Now, it might be that we see a little bit of a low print, and I'm just saying that because they probably need an excuse to cut the rates, right? Markets are falling, they want to push things up, so I'd be willing to guess that the data will be calculated such that there ends up being a nice cool print and there's a reason to cut rates. That's just a prediction. Never know what's going to happen. We do have also Bank of Canada rate statement about an hour and 50 minutes after that. So USD and CAD pairs are going to be tricky to trade on Wednesday morning until after this data is out. And of course, 10:30 a.m. the Bank of Canada press conference. And then we have the PPI data, kissing cousin to the CPI. This is for the producer side of inflation. Very dangerous to trade that as well. I'd wait until that is out. And that is 8:30 a.m. EST. That can affect markets all around the world. And then Friday we have right at the European Open, the British pound GDP, so that's going to affect pound pairs. And then at 10 a.m. EST, we have the University of Michigan consumer sentiment and inflation expectations. So that's right at 10 a.m. EST, and that can affect USD markets and stock markets. Let's jump into the charts. Okay, going to zoom out here on Bitcoin. And as I said earlier, all my predictions here are going to end on Wednesday. And I do have things looking a little bit bearish. Now, things always can change. Remember, we are in a Trump presidency, right? So this is a Trump era trading situation. And what I draw on a Sunday is meant to be like, hey, this is what's going to happen if there are not any surprises. And what do we have a lot of during Trump era presidencies are surprises in markets. So I am not trading based on this information. I use my algorithms and I avoid news events, and sometimes a news event can happen in the middle of a trade and take me out of it. And that's on anything. That's Bitcoin, that's stocks, you name it. The point here is that headline risk that can mess up a trade. The other side of that is that there's a lot of volatility and a lot of opportunities in markets. I mean, this really is just the best time to trade, despite those handful of times where Trump opens his mouth and we get kind of a surprise move in the markets. So what I expect to see outside of any Trump kind of surprises is a move down to about maybe 68,000. And it might not get all the way down there. We might see price maybe touch 78 or 74,000 and start to go sideways. That is possible, but the markets are pretty bearish. And if you look back through time here, you can see that price spent a lot of time up between 90 and 105-ish thousand and just couldn't break above that. And so the macro metrics for me, the high time frame stuff, the weekly type metrics say the price needs to head down to reset. And that reset could take months. It could. Now, I do think we're going to see price maybe head back up in quarter two. Whether or not price breaks the all-time high again in this Bitcoin cycle remains to be seen. But for the moment, I do expect price to head down And I think a good target for this week is anywhere between 74 and 67,000 roughly. Let's take a look at Solana. Solana I expect to be a little bit more bearish than Bitcoin. It is an altcoin, and of course, as Bitcoin heads down, the Bitcoin dominance will go up. Money flows out of the altcoins into Bitcoin. So Solana I do expect to head down and test 110, if not $100. Now $100 is a psychological number for Solana, but if I were to take a look strictly at the metrics and get very bearish, then $75, I know it sounds crazy, $75 is realistic by the end of this week as long as things continue to be bearish. But just for trading, if I were to look for a decent target, and then if everything lined up in the algos, I look for a 110, maybe 112 target for a move down on Solana, and that could happen pretty quick. That could happen in like a day or two. So we'll see how that goes, but that's what I'm seeing. Let's take a look at Litecoin. Now, Litecoin will melt down. There's not a lot of people who are holding it, not a lot of people trading it, but it can be rather predictable. And this is why we've added Litecoin to the chart. Now, I haven't really been interested in investing in Litecoin. It's kind of a lost coin, old tech. No one's paying attention to it anymore. Now, there might be some things to talk about there, and I'm not totally saying it's a bad move, but we have a lot of traders who are interested in trading crypto, and they want to trade in a higher time frame. And Litecoin really does seem to be very predictable. So it might be interesting to take a look, at least for a few weeks, at what Litecoin is doing in the charts. And if I don't find it to be that interesting, I'll take it back out of the rotation. For now, I do expect to move down. In a worst case for this week, maybe $80. It's sitting at 95. Actually, that's not even a worst case. That's just kind of a normal case. So anywhere from 86 down to 80 or even $78. Expecting pretty much a straight move down though. Not a lot of people that are going to buy Litecoin as it falls. It's not a very popular coin at this time in the game. So let's take a look at the EURUSD Forex pair. Okay, so the euro is getting strong, the dollar is getting weak, and that might last for a little bit, and I do expect this to just kind of continue up, right? At least until the CPI. Remember, all predictions this week end at the Tuesday CPI. So I do expect for this to continue up as it stands, and then we're going to see what happens after CPI, PPI. And there might be a little bit of resistance at $1.940. That might be where we see a little bit of a pullback. We'll see what happens around there, but price could even pop up hard and continue up towards that $1.12 by the end of the week. Let's take a look at the cable, aka GBPUSD. Very similar price action to the euro. I expect price to head up. You're going to have resistance at $1.30 or so from some older structure back here, but I do think price will continue up and test $1.31 or so. And that'll happen, I think, by the time we see CPI, if not the end of the week. Let's take a look at USDJPY. Now, we have seen the Bank of Japan allowing the Japanese yen to become stronger and stronger, and as the world's situation seems to be sort of segmenting, we're not seeing as much globalization anymore. We're seeing people kind of becoming a bit more nationalistic. The Bank of Japan and all the people in Japan may find it a bit more conducive to protect their currency. So I do expect price to head down, although it might not be quite as drastic as I have drawn here. The next support is at 141.44 yen or so. That might be where price comes down to, and then we see some resistance. Let's take a look at USDCAD. USDCAD not quite as volatile lately, not quite as tradable either, but it was extremely volatile going back a couple of months here to December, and I made a nice win back in December, and then it flattened out, and now it's just kind of trying to find where it wants to be. So it's in a little bit of an equilibrium. We're trying to find it. Right now, I do expect a kind of a slight move down, maybe might also just go sideways. If it does break out, it might bounce actually right here at about 142.39. It might not go all the way down to where I drew it. We'll see about it. Again, it's not terribly bearish, but it does have a little bit of a bearish tint if it could break out of this older range that it was in back last month. So let's take a look at the beast GBPJPY. Very rangy. The British pound and the yen are both strong right now, and they're both growing kind of at the same pace. So I don't expect much out of it. I expect to see sideways action for now until one of these currencies does something while the other doesn't, right? So not much going on here. Just expect sideways action through the week. Let's take a look at AUDJPY. Now, the Aussie dollar has been weak, but it does appear that it might be finding its feet. So we're going to see if the Aussie dollar can bounce at this recent support here, sitting at 91.83 yen, or if price will just kind of continue to wind down sideways and break below that 91.83 yen. Let's take a look at AUDUSD. Now the dollar has been getting a little bit weaker, so has the Australian dollar, so we might see some sideways action, much like we see with GBPJPY. So I don't expect much this week, maybe just arranged to form, but we'll see how that goes. We'll see how it plays out. And again, the CPI and PPI might make a big difference in that, but that remains to be seen. Let's take a look at the Swissy, aka USDCHF. Now the Swissy is kind of like an inverse euro, where the Swiss franc has been getting stronger with the dollar getting weaker. So I do expect price to continue to fall. We might get a bit of a bounce sitting at 87.32. That's 87.32 Swiss francs, but price might bounce there or not, and it will probably head down towards about 86.11 francs. And that will be a support where price may or may not bounce. And at this trajectory, Wednesday, Tuesday is a decent kind of target for all of that. Let's take a look at SP500 Futures. Slight gap down on the open. I do see a fair amount of liquidity below and bearishness in the chart. So I do expect the current trajectory to simply continue. Now again, we have CPI coming out. We have Trump era stuff. Anything can happen. You could see announcements that were unexpected. In the meantime though, if none of that happens, I do expect sideways to down action, just grinding down with 5,400 being a bit of a support. Now you do have a support now at about 57.15. So price could bounce there and simply go sideways, but things are rather bearish overall right now, especially with all the tensions in the world. That's going to push a little bit down on stocks and a little bit up on metals, and we'll get to metals in a moment, but we're going to take a look at Dow Futures. Similar to SP500, sideways to down, we do have a support at 41.76, so price might stop there, but it seems to be just grinding sideways and down, so selling the rallies on a lower time frame seems to be the way to go, and it will be similar for NASDAQ, which we're going to take a look at right now. NASDAQ Futures in Q, I do expect it to just continue down as it's done, or even possibly head down a little bit more swiftly. NASDAQ has been a bit more bearish. Either way, we do have a support at 18,274, so let's go ahead and see if price can break below that, or if it never even comes to that. We're going to see how that goes. Let's take a look at gold. Now gold I've got going sideways. It could go up or down. It really depends on what happens. We have a bit of uncertainty going on with Ukraine right now. If you've watched the news, we have the US not helping Ukraine. We have Russia taking over Kursk again, which Kursk was where the Ukrainians had come on in and retaken, and now it's getting retaken by the Russians. So it's getting a little bit dicey over there, and without the US help, things might not be looking good for Ukraine. And the quietness in the metals market is a bit concerning to me, actually, because there's a lot going on in the world and gold's only going sideways. So that kind of concerns me a little bit. It means that perhaps whatever's going on is just evidence of things winding down in the world, which is possibly a good thing, or it could mean that something big is coming. But for the moment, I expect sideways action to rotate between, say, 2,900 and about 2,930. So quiet week, but we'll see what happens. Anything can happen. Let's take a look at silver. Similar to gold, rotation more or less probably between 32.25 and maybe 32.72. So again, things are extremely unpredictable. We're in a Trump era market. Announcements can throw all of these off. These drawings are not here to trade on, right? They're not for me to go and actually trade. I'm not looking for a price to do these things necessarily and then trade based on that. But what I do is I use this to figure out which way the wind is blowing. And in the absence of any market surprises, I can use that as a kind of a guide, right? It's like, oh, okay, it's supposed to do this. This might be a good place to grab a short, especially if nothing crazy has happened in the markets. And as you can see with the trade that I shared, I even announced publicly before I took this trade last night on Twitter. There it is right there. You can see it. Last night, 19 hours ago, 79K BTC incoming, methinks so. I literally shared this with everybody, right? And I even shared the actual trade itself with Algo Factory so they could do their own research and make their own decision. And we do this all day long. I'm very, very good at what I do, and I teach people how to do that, and you can learn how to do this kind of thing as well. It doesn't take any genius intellect. Anybody can learn it if you have the work ethic. This is not get rich quick. This is come and learn something new. This is if you are dedicated, you have the best chance of being successful. This is perhaps getting yourself a side income or even a whole income. And if you're already a trader and you find that you're not profitable, we can help you rehabilitate your accounts. So please come on over algofactory.tech. Learn how to trade like a hedge fund pro, and we will see you Tuesday morning, 8:30 a.m. EST sharp.